Let's move over to the pass catchers as love-hate continues, and we start with the love list. This one, a no-brainer. Rashee Rice makes the love list, 7+ receptions in 5 of his past 7 games going back to last season. Matthew, most importantly, it just felt like the Chiefs were getting creative with his matchups against the Ravens.
He had a 33% target share, and that's not a fluke. He's had at least a 25% target share in 6 of his past 7 regular season games. He's expanded his route tree. We've talked about this a lot in the preseason, why we were so bullish on Rashee Rice as a football player this year, is because of the expansion of his route tree. Andy Reid talked to me about this at the Combine. I've mentioned this multiple times, but just talked about that once Rashee Rice learned how to go inside and learn a lot of the same routes that Travis Kelce honestly is running. That just opened up everything for him. And you saw in that game on Thursday night against the Ravens, they were more focused on Travis Kelce. And so they just got this easy pitch and catch stuff with Rice. They were really creative in how they moved him around. They created mismatches for him. And they're going to keep doing that because, again, this is the brilliance of the Chiefs and why the rich get richer. But it's like, what are you going to do if you're an offensive coordinator and you watch that game against Baltimore and you're like, all right, we're taking Rashee Rice out of it. All right, well, wait, you're going to leave single. You're going to Xavier Worthy in single coverage. Wait, you're going to just leave Travis Kelce to just roam around in the middle of the field. What about Pacheco? Like
Chiefs offense is scary.
They have so many weapons, and then you've got the best quarterback in football and a creative offensive mind in Andy Reid. Rashee Rice against a Bengals defense that again gave up 13 points to the Patriots. You're like, oh, only 13 points. That's 13 more than they should have. They were at home against Jacoby Brissett. Like, that's embarrassing. I'm sorry. And now they have to go. By the way, remember, the Chiefs played the Thursday night game, the opening game. The Chiefs have had 10 days to prepare for a home game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, yeah, I want all the Chiefs this week, including Rashee Rice, who comes in as a top 10 wide receiver for me this week.
I think the key with Rice is just that the slot is a cheat code for fantasy because it just produces such stable production. Look at all those passes that Rashee Rice was catching. Short, intermediate, wide open from Patrick Mahomes. He lined up 22 times in the slot against Baltimore, 20 times out wide. If he's going to play like 50% of his time in the slot, then he's going to be a monster. He's underrated because just Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, they just suck up so much oxygen in terms of the coverage of the team because they're so famous. Rashee Rice is a top 15 talent at wide receiver in the NFL, and he's Patrick Mahomes' number 1 option.
Another wide receiver here, guys, Deebo Samuel, great target share in week 1, 31%. And Jay, while Christian McCaffrey is down, Deebo obviously gets more involved in the rushing attack as well.
Yep, I mean, just like watch the game against the Jets. This offense, it was Deebo Samuel's offense. He was the guy who was making everything tick. He gets into the end zone. He's being used still at wide back. And I think until Brandon Ayuk gets up to speed, it might take a little while based on how Brandon Ayuk looked in week 1. This is going to be Deebo Samuel's offense, and he's going to be the number 1 guy.
Very quietly, in 6 of his last 8 games dating back to last season, ding for your old 06-010 fans, he's had at least 18 fantasy points. 18 fantasy points or more in 6 of the last 8 games. So, yeah, I also have Deebo Samuel as a top 10 play this week against the Vikes.
Yep. Just also with Deebo, like 2021, he had over 1,400 receiving yards. Like he was a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL that season. I think he gets a little bit forgotten because McCaffrey takes up so much and Ayuk is taking up so much. McCaffrey's not there and Ayuk's getting up to speed. Then Deebo Samuel is an absolutely elite NFL option.
For so long, he was the forgotten man because he wasn't healthy while everyone else was. Now Ayuk's conditioning isn't there, McCaffrey's not healthy, and it's Deebo again.
Yep.
It's just weird how it obviously turns
friend of the
all based on
podcast, Deebo Samuel, by the way.
That's right.
Yes. Absolutely.
Chris Godwin coming off a very strong week 1. Matthew, he caught all 8 of his targets against your Commanders, and he's at Detroit, indoor game against a defense that can allow some fantasy points to wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, especially wide receivers in the slot. Last week, they gave the most catches and the 3rd most yards to the slot. Now, that's Cooper Kupp. And we're not saying Chris Godwin is Cooper Kupp.
He's still good.
And we're also not saying Chris Godwin's going to get, how many targets did Cooper Kupp get? 400?
21.
In that game?
Close.
So we're not saying, we're not saying Godwin's going to get that much target share, but it is worth noting that he had a 27% target share from Baker Mayfield in week 1. He caught all 8 of his targets. And so Godwin, who is back to the slot this year, the emergence of Jalen McMillan in this Buccaneers offense, he had such a strong preseason camp, just allows them, I'm not saying McMillan's going to have consistent fantasy value, although he caught a touchdown on week 1. I'm not saying yet that he's going to have consistent fantasy value this year because he's clearly still the 4th option on offense after Evans, Godwin, and the running back, but White or Bucky Irving, whoever's in there. But the fact that he exists, the fact that he's competent enough to be out there, allows the Buccaneers to play Chris Godwin in the slot, where Baker Mayfield has always been comfortable throwing, even dating back to like Jarvis Landry, if you think back, his rookie year in Cleveland, I think. And so I really like Godwin in this matchup on the road at Detroit. Godwin comes in for me at wide receiver 15.
Yep. You know who's the number 1 graded wide receiver in the NFL by PFF in week 1? It's Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin is 28 years old. We've talked about this before. It feels like he's 34 years old because he's just been around for ages. But if he's going to line up 55% of the time in the slot like he did in week 1, then this could be a surprising rejuvenation season for Godwin.
Mark Andrews.
They rejuvenated Mike Evans last year. This year it's Chris Godwin. Good for the Bucs.
Mark Andrews makes the love list. He played on 76% of the pass plays in week 1. He actually ran more routes than Isaiah Likely, Jay, but Likely got the production instead.
Yep, and he gets this matchup against the Raiders defense. I think the thing with Mark Andrews is that, again, not overreacting too much to week 1. Like, if you look at the underlying stuff, the fact that he was out there so much, and it seems like the Chiefs' game plan was built around taking him out of the game. Like, one game isn't enough sample to flip to the notion that he is now the number 2 tight end. You still have to regress to preseason expectations this early in the season. And so, yeah, I expect that Mark Andrews is going to outproduce Isaiah Likely on the weekend.
A lot of double coverage, a lot of brackets that he faced against Kansas City. He has traditionally struggled against Steve Spagnuolo defenses. Mark Andrews has, but now he gets the Raiders, who to tight ends in week number 1, they gave up a 73% catch rate, over 15 yards per reception. And I also just think, I don't have a stat for this, but just narrative based, after such a quiet week 1, like Lamar Jackson's not a moron, right? Quarterbacks know, hey, I got to keep my guys happy, right? And and so like today, Jay, you weren't here yesterday. The show did monster ratings. I know you're nervous, you're insecure, so we've got to feed you a little bit. We got to get you back in the swing of things.
I started with him when I introed the show. Welcome back. You missed a lot of fun. What have you been doing? Go Mets.
Yeah, exactly.
Go Mets.
Yeah, we talked about the Mets and the Braves. We talked about some of your degenerate bets.
Yes.
Like I included you in my Shannon Sharp joke.
Feed me some screen passes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let me touch the ball.
There you go.
Sure.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's what Lamar Jackson's going to want to do with Mark Andrews after the quiet week 1 for one of the stars of this offense, and it's a great matchup at home against Las Vegas.
Some others receiving votes in the pass catchers group: Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, Jamison Williams with a breakout game in week 1, first game ball of his life, he said. Demarcus Robinson, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jawan Johnson. Obviously, all those guys, Matthew, are much further down the list as desperation plays that could give you something.
Devontae Smith comes in at wide receiver 18 for me, a 28% target share in week 1. We like the matchup against the Falcons as well. DJ Moore, again, with Adunze out and Keenan Allen banged up a little bit. DJ Moore should have a nice game against the Texans defense. They gave up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Remember, they got beat deep a couple of times. That should be a great one on Sunday night. You mentioned Jamison Williams. We talked about him a lot the other day as well, but just the expanded route tree and the increased target share. Demarcus Robinson should have a bigger role now with Puka Nacua on IR and is going to miss a number of games. His last full 5 games of last season, weeks 13 on through week 17, 13 to 17 last week, Demarcus Robinson averaged 15.4 fantasy points per game. He played 92% of the snaps in week 1. He'll be a bigger part of the game plan against Arizona, and again, we like that matchup. Look, and I've been waiting forever. I'm so annoyed. There's nothing more annoying in Dynasty than when you wait on a guy, wait on a guy, wait on a guy, wait on a guy, and then you're finally like, you know what, screw it, I'm out. And then that guy finally starts popping. But that's what may be happening with Wan'Dale Robinson, who I've been carrying since he was a rookie. Like, I believed in this guy, Dable offense. They spent a day 2 pick on him. Talented kid out of Kentucky, right?
Yep.
And just never seemed to happen. But last week, 31% target share for Wan'Dale Robinson. That was a team high, more than Malik Neighbors. He actually got 75% of the Giants' red zone targets. Not that there were a ton of them, but those that were, 3 out of the, 75% of them went to Wan'Dale Robinson. And so, by the way, all the stats that we talked about Chris Godwin and how awesome he was last week, that was in the slot against Washington, who the Giants play this week as well, where Wan'Dale Robinson will be the slot guy. So, he's wide receiver 50. Let's not get crazy. He's still got Daniel Jones. Commanders are actually favored in this game somehow. If you're digging deep, you're looking for a cheap DFS option as well. I do think Wan'Dale Robinson is potentially usable this week.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.